And I'm here today with the fabulous Kirsty Lewis. Hello.
Hey, Tim, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us on Do Yourself a Favour.
My pleasure.
Would you like to tell everybody who you are and what your thing is?
Yeah, I'm Kirsty Lewis, founder of School of Facilitation, a space for facilitators and trainers to come and grow and basically be awesome.
And I can vouch for the awesomeness of people in the School of Facilitation. Big support to me, big help to me during my transition from corporate world to doing this. Just a bunch of really, really lovely people who like helping people.
Yes, I think that's sort of if anyone out there is listening who's a facilitator or a trainer, and if you really listen to yourself, often one of the main reasons why we do what we do is people just enjoy helping others and being in service to others.
And also, I think the personality type generally of people who do what we do is that, they're people.
Yes.
But quite often work on their own.
Yeah, I often say that's quite ironic, isn't it? Like we love working with people and helping them, yet we find ourselves on our own a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, certainly it's been a big support to me. So I was very glad that I found the School of Facilitation. So we'll get into it, if that's all right, Kirsty.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So the first question that I had, and these are the same 5 questions that we ask everyone. So the first question was, what's something you wish that you learnt?
So this is in relation to creating my business. So I've had my own business for the last 12 years since corporate life, and it's about finding your community. And that's one of the main tenets of SOF, is having that community of collaboration and community of connection. And I started this element of SOF, the community, because I was missing my friends. I was missing people to talk to and have that support. So I think whether you're whatever walk of life you're in, whether you're in a corporate, whether you work for yourself, whether you are in NGO, charity sector, whether you're in like public sector, is find your people. I think that's one of my things. Like, I wish I'd known that sooner, is if you find those people, you will have an immediate support network and people around you to support you, to talk to bounce ideas off and to have different ideas from as well.
When did you find your people?
So I've found my people throughout life in different guises. So originally it was through my sport. So I played a lot of sport as a young person, a lot of hockey, a lot of squash. And then from a corporate perspective, I was really lucky. The one main company I worked for, Guinness Diageo, and I found people in there that were definitely my people. But when I stepped outside, it probably took me 5 years to find my community. And then in the end, I created it. I created this community that is now known as School of Facilitation. I created breakfast meetings that turned into gatherings that came out locally and then globally. So yeah, I've created that.
And what was the driver for starting to create that? Because was there a sense of something missing, or how did you identify that was what you needed to do?
Good question. I was missing talking to people outside of the company that I was an associate for. Actually, there's more to this. There's other people out there that do what I do, and I think it was at that point, it was around 2014, and there was I think there was a bit of a tipping point with the internet, LinkedIn, social media, and it became I became more and more aware there were thousands of us out there who do what I'm passionate about. So I was like, I wonder who they all talk to. How do we find one another? So yeah, that's why I think I started the SOF breakfast meetings.
And how so presumably they started in person, because
yes,
everything was in person rather than online before.
I did it in London first because I lived in London, and then I was like, I had friends up in the Midlands, so then we went to Leamington Spa. And then I was like, I then moved to just outside of Winchester. So I then did some in Winchester. And then I experimented with Bristol, but Bristol's a really interesting place. It's quite saturated with lots of activity and like groups already. So in the end, we folded that one. And then COVID hit anyway. So we went totally virtual, which has been with the creation of the community pod, which happens on a Friday, the first Friday of every month.
And does it feel, it feels to me a little bit like COVID actually was just a massive opportunity for the School of Facilitation.
Yeah, I think what happened, it was another tipping point. because and I think this is how you found us, Tim, is the week that COVID decided to rear its ugly head in the UK was the week of the 16th of March. And I really vividly recall writing an email to my nearest and dearest buddies in the world of facilitation and training. There's about 60 of them. That's how close I say nearest and dearest. And I was like, guys, something's going on. I'm recognizing the world is shifting and changing. Do you want to come and have a chat? And a good 30 odd replied yes. So that Friday morning, we started the conversation and then had a gathering every Friday morning for 20 weeks and brought people together. And we had people come from Taiwan. We had people dial in from Singapore. Some people even got up very early in America. Lots of Europeans and people predominantly from the UK. So it really flagged it to me that people were looking for others to be able to connect to and talk to and find their people to support them a particularly hard and tough time.
Yeah. So moving on to the next question then, is there, or what was a book or a concept or a cultural touchstone that changed the direction of things?
I had one book in my head and then you said that changed it. I'm going to have two. So one is Profit First by Mike, and I can never say his surname because it's a very long Polish sounding surname. So Profit First is a concept that as business owners, we take profit and pay ourselves first over and above operating costs and taxes and other costs. Because if you work for yourself, this may ring true, we have a propensity to pay others before ourselves. We have a propensity to do our outlay costs first, which is probably right in terms of the outlay cost, but we don't often think about ourselves. We put ourselves last.
Kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah. And so the methodology of Profit First is, and it's probably something our grandparents and grandparents did quite naturally, is you have different pots, or in now this world, different bank accounts, depending on what you need. So let me give an example for SOF. We have a bank account for our tax. We have a bank account for the associates. We have a bank account that's called operating costs. Owner's pay is the fourth one, and profit is the fifth one. And therefore, every time I get an invoice, I look at, well, what's the tax that's the VAT, as we call it in the UK. So the VAT immediately gets put in there, but also a percentage of the overall value of the invoice gets accrued for my tax. So that's for corporation tax that we have to pay, and also for my personal tax. So I know immediately that's saved. There's a percentage, often it's about 45% goes to my owner's pay. There's a high percentage that's the operating costs. Associates, because people work for me, that money immediately gets accrued because that's not my money to spend. And then there's a percentage as well for profit. And what it has done for me as a business owner, one, it's made me realize, hold on a minute. Yeah, I am okay to pay myself. That's one really important thing, because it's a balance of exchange. Because if I don't pay myself, what am I doing this for? I'm not a charity. It also means I'm really clear how much money I have every month to be able to pay myself. There's also the profit fund, and that's the best one, because whilst it's only a very small percentage, I think it's about 4% of every invoice, that accrues over time. So every quarter I spend an element of that profit fund on me, or doing something with my loved ones, or having a mini adventure. And that makes it all worthwhile. Or I might choose to reinvest it back into the business. But it's proactive choices with money. And you can do the same as well with your personal monies as well. And then the other reason I did it, Tim, was from a business perspective. I had two bank accounts at the beginning. I always had a VAT bank account and a tax bank account, and then everything else. But I never knew how much money I had available to me in a month. It just made it really clear and easy to understand. The other book that was a tipping point was back in the day in 1999. I can even see myself reading it, was Franklin Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That was a real tipping point book for me as well. I was in the corporate world. I was selling Guinness, and it was that was my first probably awakening to, I can choose to do things. I can choose how I feel or how I show up. So that was another book that really had a profound impact. And then the other one that really just jumps into my head is Bounce by Matt Said.
Okay, the table tennis.
And that was one of his first books that he wrote, and he talked about is talent nature or nurture.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there was just some elements in there that really jumped out for me. So one of them is around purposeful practice and purposeful feedback. So it doesn't, and being in the world of learning and development, that really resonates, because you know what, we can teach you all you want about, I don't know, being a great salesperson, like being brilliant at marketing, but unless you go away and practice and get that positive, get a meaningful feedback loop in place, it makes no difference really. So that book had quite an impact. That was 2011. I can see myself reading it, and I know when a book has impact because I write notes, bend corners of a page down.
Oh, I'm a page bender. Yeah, I torture my books.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah. I think a book that's been properly read and abused, you should be able to spot it from the shelf.
Post-it notes, the spine is really broken, pages are turned down, you know where it is on your bookshelf, you can just go and grab it. And that's the other thing I can tell when a book has value is because I've bought it as a book and it's not on my Kindle. Or it started live on my Kindle, and then I'm like, actually, there's too much good stuff going on in here. I need to physically hold it. So business books now, and if it's not a storybook, I buy it physically.
There's definitely something I find. I tend to use my Kindle as like holiday reading, just because then I don't have to fill half my case with books.
I call it chewing gum for the eyes, Tim.
Nice, yes, I like that. Yeah, and then there's a bit of, but books I think that I'm going to refer back to, or where I feel like there's stuff that I'm going to need to have there is something tangible about being able to sort of pick something up and flick through the page and search for it and thing. Yeah. Absolutely. I think also there's something about I seem to recall, there's something about the recall, I think, from a physical book, because in an ebook, you haven't got the sense of how far into the book are you physically, where on the page it is, pages are different depending on how you flick backwards and forwards.
Definitely. That I've read that I was pleased I didn't know how big they were, because I would have then been counting down how much of my enjoyment time I had left. So the book I'm thinking about is called I Am Pilgrim, and great book, but it's a good 700 pages, but I read it on a Kindle. So one, I was unaware of how big it was, but also I was so engrossed in the book that if I could have physically seen the pages getting smaller, I'd have been quite sad. I sometimes get character loss, book loss. I'm like, oh, I finished. Oh, I'm sad. I'm gonna miss that now.
I read the last of the Mick Herron, or what I suspect might be the last of the Mick Herron Slough House novels this summer, and I found them at the beginning of the pandemic, and they're like one of my favorite fiction reads in years and years.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up.
It's basically about like crap spot, sort of like, people who can't be fired by MI5, but are sort of like, so they're sort of put off to this kind of like really bad posting where they do boring work, working for a horrible man. And they're fabulous in a sort of proper sort of like dingy British espionage kind of way, and hilariously written. And I just tore through those over the course of about 12 months. And I finished Slough House, which is the most recent one, and I suspect might be the last one. And I just felt bereft.
Yes, I was about to say, is that the word? I have the word bereft in my head.
Yeah, it's quite, so it made me, I identify that. Also, I think the book that I was very glad that I read on my Kindle was Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, because it's massive, really, really big. If I tried to take that on my commute, it would have like taken up half of my work bag.
And also I find really big books, because I do a lot of reading in bed, like suddenly you almost feel like you need to have something to prop it up on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because so you're right. So big.
Yeah, something like a big heavy, you could do yourself some proper damage with like a big heavy hardback.
So. The books that spring to mind when you say that about the size, Edward Rutherford, I don't know if you've read any of his, he writes really good books about places that are then over a time span of hundreds of years, and you follow, say, 5 or 6 families. There's one on London, one on Dublin, one on Salisbury, the New Forest, Moscow. They're brilliant. They're amazing books, actually. And heavy, yeah.
Excellent.
But great.
So what is the tool that you can't do without? What's the
Well,
thing? Yeah. What's the thing?
I was thinking about this. So in a previous life, I would have said my phone, and I think that's a classic one. But as of January, so 6 months ago, I broke my phone, didn't really miss it, and then finally got a new phone and didn't bother putting emails on LinkedIn, Facebook. So I'm not missing my phone if I don't have it.
So is your phone like actually?
She's holding her phone up. Yes, it is. It's just a classic. I mean, it's an Android, and you can add everything to it if I wanted to.
But you use it as a phone, just
yes,
like as a phone.
Tim, I use it to make phone calls and everything. But it's and this podcast is being recorded on the first day that I've finally gone back into do a face-to-face workshop. So I've done a first journey into London for 9 months, but I'm like, oh, I'm not missing the fact I don't have my emails on here. It's quite nice. It's quite liberating. So the thing that I probably could not do without, something that I probably use every day if I could, are my trainers.
Okay.
Because I really enjoy running and walking. And I think as a tool for life, being able to get outside into nature and have fresh air and to breathe is super important. So it would be I've got 2 pairs of trainers. My road trainers are Hoka and my Salomon for trails. So I wouldn't be without them.
How does the running, walking, going outside, how does that fit into your routine? How do you hack that into your life?
So first thing in the morning, it's gym or run. So it'll be out by 7 o'clock. And then weekends, I'll do a longer run. So I'll do like up to like 19K, which I stupidly did this weekend, and that hurt. It was good, but when I do it on a weekend, I go with my best mate for a run, so that's our time to catch up, chew the fat. Let's be clear, we walk a lot, we talk a lot, we walk up the hills, but eating whatever we're eating, like the gel bars and everything, but it's just a really good time, like good 2.5 hours outside. It feels good.
It's and I guess there's that sense in that as well, is you're properly away from your work,
Correct.
your mind's away from your work, your body's, you're physically moving about.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. And what I really notice as well is if I need to write something, whether it's a client proposal, a workshop framework, write a newsletter, compose an email, I find if I go running or cycling, I often get it all composed in my head, something that I'm doing on my own. Whereas if I go for a walk or if I go to the gym, there's just too many slight other distractions. So running and cycling also give me that space to contemplate and just noodle things over.
I'm very similar in that I find I put things together whilst moving about.
Yeah.
If I sit down to write something, it'll either be terrible or I won't do it. Whereas if I just sort of do it while I'm walking about and just kind of it helps.
So it's like the running or the cycling, all my ideas just flood around, and then I often get back to the house, and then I'll be like, if possible, I will capture it and just type straight into a Word doc to start with, and then I do a bit of editing and refining.
Nice. And this is just out of interest, do you write it verbatim? Do you write it how you're going to say it, or is it notes and then you kind of riff on it as you put it together?
You're a receiver of my newsletters. I write it exactly how it's going to go.
Right.
No notes. It just goes straight down on paper. So the way I write is all thoughts come out my head as I'm thinking about them and feeling them. And there's some, but then I often then put that to one side for 24 hours. And then I'll go back to it again a day later and see, like, does that actually make sense? Where do I need to move it around and juggle? And sometimes I can get it done in 2 edits. Sometimes it's 3.
Okay. So but that's generally sort of like knocking the edges off, but fundamentally you've got it from your run when you've come back.
Yeah.
Okay. I wish I could.
It's the truth. I will make sure the spelling's correct and the grammar's correct, but I won't get too hung up on, is that what I really want to? No, I do get hung up. Is it what I really want to say? But if it's not flowing from me, then I'm like, well, it's not meant to be. So I delete things out.
Okay. And actually, that's interesting. Is from basically, so I've just published my newsletter earlier on today, and one of the articles that I linked to was, one that talks about how, as people generally, we tend to add things when we're problem solving rather than take things away. And there was some research that was done with like Lego problems, where asking people to solve problems, and generally people will be adding pieces rather than removing pieces in order to solve the problems. And I think that's actually that's where actually having a good editor, or at least giving yourself the space to come to it with an editing point of view. Because otherwise it's very easy to just add words and bulk it out to try and solve a problem that excising a few sentences would probably.
I agree. And I sometimes edit other people's newsletters or work, and I just want to strip extra words. And I think there's a percentage of the population, the extrovert feelers, we add lots of adjectives in, and we add lots of phrases, and make the language sound really flowery. And I'm a bit like, oh no, it's too much. Delete. And actually, I think depending on what it is you're writing, so we're talking about newsletters here, there's an optimal length of about 500 words, and anything else becomes a bit war and peace-ish, and it's just too much for people to digest. And we've got to remember as well, if anyone's listening who writes newsletters, predominantly people are reading them on their telephones. They're not reading them on the device that you're writing it. So you've got to then I think you need to do the phone test, says she who doesn't have them on her phone anymore. But you've got to say how, like, I'm scrolling, how much scrolling is going on here.
Yeah, that's really true. Did I do that? I didn't do that this time. You've reminded me of a quote. I have no idea who it's by, so I'm going to say Winston Churchill, because you're constantly misattributing things to Winston Churchill on LinkedIn, aren't you? Or Mark Twain. Yeah, the quote was, "I'm sorry this is so long. I didn't have time to make it shorter."
Yeah, and actually, I've just found out that is one of the most misattributed quotes. So it's not Winston. Mark Twain mentions something vaguely similar, but it's actually a French philosopher from the 16th or 17th century when they translated his work. That's where the first started.
Okay.
I'll find the link for you and send it.
Lovely. That would be fantastic. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
So what was your most recent acquisition or purchase that has made things you find useful, or has made things you kind of gone, oh, I'm really glad I did that?
Ooh, well, the first one that comes into my head, because it's very live, is I bought a house. So that's this last few days literally has happened and moved. But something that for others, God, nothing really springs. That sounds so bad, doesn't it? I don't buy loads of things anymore. I think, like, talking about deleting things or throwing things away, I've been going through quite a decluttering, not in a Marie Kondo style and sitting there holding it going, does this bring me joy? But moving the house. And I think being in lockdown has really made me think, well, do I need this? And I think, so from a lockdown perspective, because I haven't been going out, it's like I haven't need to buy things. I haven't bought clothes, and that doesn't bother me, I've realized. And actually, no one gives two hoots. The only person who cares is ourselves, isn't it? Right? What we're wearing. And I'm not a gadgety person, so that's never been my thing either. So like, people get all hung up on the latest gadgets and do you have this and do you have that? And I'm like, no. Tim, I don't have an answer for you. I'm sorry. I'm more about throwing things away. I've discovered eBay.
Oh,
from a local tip.
From a point of view of getting rid of all your old stuff. Did you have anything that you got rid of on eBay that was you were surprised at the interest or how much you got for it? Did you have?
Oh, I've got rid of shoes, and I was always surprised that people would want my old shoes. There's some things that I've got, and I'm like, come on, someone buy it. Like, I've got an old DVD player and a VHF. It's like, come on, someone buy these items, please, so I can just get rid of them. Otherwise, they're just going to go to the tip. I think they're heading for the tip this weekend, actually, which is a shame.
And what? So, given that the last purchase that you made that you're excited about is the new house, what are you particularly excited about the move?
I've got a garden now.
Okay.
So haven't had a garden for the last probably 12 years, and that's been fine. I'm not a big gardener, but now I'm a bit like, oh, I wonder if I can grow what is it that I could try and grow? So that's exciting, having a go at growing things. And I wonder if it's an age thing. Have I come to that point in my life where, as a late 40s, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna have a go at growing things.
Someone bought my wife a book for Christmas, I think, or her birthday, which is called The Art of Pottering. And it very specifically talks about pottering as being the act of being productive in a very kind of unplanned, I guess, unstructured kind of way. So you're just like wandering around finding small jobs to do. And I think
Yes.
with the house, and my mother-in-law says a lot, there's always something to do with the house. And between a house and a garden, I think there's plenty of pottering opportunity. And there is something very, you could lose half an hour just doing small productive things that you hadn't really necessarily planned doing.
Yes.
And I think it's quite healing.
I'm starting to notice that after 5 days in. So yeah, I think it's, for me though, I end up having to planning it all in because I've got to fit it in between a run and a ride. And I'm like, oh, I didn't have to do that when I rented, like potter and worry about the garden or worry about a light fitting not working. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and if you decide that you need to put WD-40 on anything, make sure you've got like a whole afternoon booked out. Because once you've WD-40'd like a squeaky hinge, you'll then wander around for the rest of the afternoon looking for things to WD-40.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's what happens.
I'll take that. I thought you were going to tell me, be careful that when you squirt it, it doesn't then dribble everywhere and you end up having to clean it off carpets.
Oh, you'll that too, yeah. But mainly just because you'll be wandering around looking for things that need a bit of a squeeze of WD-40.
Interesting.
It's, yeah.
Okay, cool. Sound advice.
So, Kirsty, I'd like you to finish sentence for me. Do yourself a favour and
sort your shit out. Because this is a phrase I use when talking to facilitators and trainers, is I think I was just talking to a client about it, like doing your inner work. Because if you don't, and you just live your life oblivious to what is going on inside of your head and your body, mentally, emotionally, physically and spiritually, it's really easy to let all those external influences run you. And maybe some internal influences that you're unaware of. So it's all unconscious behaviors. So by sorting your shit out and having conscious, intentional conversations with yourself, or maybe you're having coaching, or you're going through a learning experience that has got an element of psychology, I personally believe it makes all of us healthier, more rounded, more self-aware, and a better person.
When did you sort?
Well, I think it's probably when I started with the COVID stuff in '99, and it's been an ever-ending conversation since. Because what I've learned is, in the classic coaching phrase, you peel back a layer of the onion, and you think, oh, I've just done some really deep work, and then something else pops up. So, and I think to begin with, what happens is you do some inner work. And it's quite deep and it's quite profound for some people. And you can just see people just like going, oh my God, this is all happening for me. And it can be scary and it can be exciting and it can be overwhelming. And then I think you go through a bit of that transformation and then you sit with it for a couple of years, and then something else might happen that invites you to go back and have a look at yourself, or a big life event occurs, death, marriage, birth, I think. So I think I'd invite everybody, if you've never thought to look at yourself, to do that. And then if you're on that journey, just know it's now a journey. The only way out is probably when you pass away. And once you start peeling back the onions, it's ever ending. It's
a bit like one of the things that I say when I'm doing productivity training, which is like, the aim is not to get everything ticked off.
Yes.
Like, you never get everything ticked off. The aim is to feel good about what you're ticking off and to feel like you're doing the right things as you go through it.
Yeah. And someone said to me once, we're holographs. So a holograph of Tim is made up of lots of photographs of Tim to make a bigger Tim.
Okay.
So if you decide to make a change in one part of your life, so let's just say fitness, you decide to do something that increases your fitness levels, but the byproduct of that is suddenly your mental wellness improves and escalates, to even more. So therefore that could mean that your productivity changes. So what we see is, in the holograph of Tim, whilst he's made a change in one small part of his life, actually the overall image changes as well.
Okay.
So that's what, for me, that's one of those benefits of taking a look at yourself and sorting your shit out.
Excellent. Thank you, Kirsty. So where can people find you?
3 places I get happiness from: on Instagram under School of Facilitation, on LinkedIn under my name, Kirsty Lewis, and then on our website, www.schooloffacilitation.com.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. Thanks for coming on. Do yourself a favour, and thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Bye.